can't hide 100 years in the ghetto.
You know that time will get you killed.
He was giving it away.
The movie begins by showing us a future where humans have been genetically engineered to stop aging at 25. Will wakes up and sees he has less than 24 hours left. He heads downstairs and greets his mother, telling Will to meet her at the bus station later so he can give her some more time. She then hands him 30 minutes so he can afford a decent lunch. Will kisses her goodbye and leaves for work. On his way, Will encounters a child named Maya who asks for a minute. He kindly gives her 5 minutes, sending her away with a smile. He arrives at the factory where he works with his friend Boral, producing time storage devices. After a long day's work, Will clocks out but realizes his payment is short. When he demands the rest, the distributor explains that the quota has increased and Will didn't meet it. Later, Will heads to a local bar where some men invite him to gamble. He declines but reminds one of them about the hour he owes, which he promptly collects. He then meets up with Boral, who is drunk and points out a man buying drinks for everyone. Boral explains that this man, Henry, has more than a century of time. Will notices someone watching Henry suspiciously and warns Henry that he's drawing too much attention, suggesting he should leave. But Henry refuses. A gang of men suddenly enters the bar, causing panic among the crowd. Boral recognizes them as minutemen gangsters who rob and extort time and urges Will to leave. But Will insists on staying to observe. The gang's leader, Fortis, confronts Henry, demanding his time and even offering him a chance to fight for it. Henry, visibly nauseous, excuses himself to the bathroom, followed by one of the gang members. Inside, Henry vomits as the thug watches him, but suddenly Will bursts in, knocks the thug out, and helps Henry escape. They flee through the streets with the minutemen chasing after them. After climbing over a gate and hiding in an abandoned building, they narrowly avoid capture when one of the men recognizes Will, leading Fortis to call off the chase. Now safe, Will and Henry begin talking. Henry asks Will what he would do if he had the same amount of time as him. Will answers firmly that he wouldn't waste it the way Henry does. That night, the two rest. By morning, Henry transfers nearly all of his time to a sleeping Will, leaving himself only 5 minutes. When Will wakes, he's shocked to discover over a century on his timer. He searches for Henry and finds him sitting on a bridge, smiling as his final seconds run out before falling into the river. Later, Will visits Boral's house, where he sees Boral's wife Greta holding their newborn baby. Will tells Boral about the night's events and shows him the time he now has. Meanwhile, Rachel pays off a 2-day loan and tries to board a bus, only to learn the fare has increased. She pleads with the driver and other passengers, but no one helps. Desperate, she begins running home. At the same time, Will rushes toward her, the two racing against time itself. With every step, Rachel's seconds tick away. They finally spot each other and sprint as fast as they can, but death reaches Rachel first, and she collapses in Will's arms. A lifeless Rachel collapses into Will's arms, and he breaks down, devastated that they were just seconds away from finally having the life they always dreamed of. Now, Will has all the time he could ever want, but his mother has none. The next day, timekeepers recover Henry's body from the river. Raymond, the senior timekeeper, and his junior partner Jaeger arrive to investigate the scene. As they're about to leave, Raymond notices a surveillance camera positioned on top of the bridge. Meanwhile, Will sits inside a car, dressed in a sharp new suit with a hardened look on his face. He is leaving his time zone, crossing the borders that divide the social classes. Along the way, he passes through multiple checkpoints, each requiring a toll fee that grows steeper the closer he gets to the wealthiest district. At the final border, he pays a full year, and the driver welcomes him to the opulent city of New Greenwich. Curious, the driver asks Will what his true purpose is in coming to such a place. Will calmly replies that he intends to make the people of New Greenwich pay. The city is nothing like what Will is used to. As soon as he steps out of the car, his instincts betray him. He immediately begins running, still moving with the urgency of someone from the ghetto who never has enough time. Catching himself, he glances at his forearm and forces himself to act more like someone who has all the time in the world. This strange behavior, however, quickly draws the attention of a young woman named Sylvia. Will checks into a hotel and asks for a suite. Inside the luxurious room, he wakes up with the same 105 years still glowing on his arm. Despite the comfort of the bed and the breathtaking view, the memory of his mother's untimely death continues to haunt him. For the first time in his life, Will indulges in gourmet food and fine drinks. When he pays, he casually tips the waitress an entire wheat. The surprised waitress remarks that Will seems to do everything a little too fast, unlike the wealthy who live without urgency. Will smirks and replies that he doesn't finish quickly when it comes to the things that matter. Planning his next move, Will decides to enter the casino, but first, he changes his wardrobe to match the wealthy elite. At the timekeeper headquarters, Jaeger reports surveillance footage of a man who crossed several borders on his way to New Greenwich. They pull up his information on their system, and Raymond studies it closely. He then remarks that he once knew Will's father. Inside the casino, Will sits down at a poker table, where he meets Sylvia Weis, a billionaire who possesses eons of time. After a few rounds, Will's winnings pile up to over 2 centuries. Felipe raises the stakes, increasing the pot by 50 years. Will, brimming with confidence, calls. When the final card is revealed, the 6 of diamonds will secures the win. But as the game goes on, Will's focus drifts toward Sylvia, the beautiful young woman sitting beside Felipe. At one point, Felipe rolls up his sleeve, revealing the vast time on his arm, nearly 10 millennia. He launches into a speech about the massive divide between the rich and the poor, justifying it as natural selection. Then he raises the pot by 2 more centuries. Will boldly accepts the bet, leaving himself with only 30 seconds on his arm. Everyone watches in shock, but luck favors Will again, and he wins a staggering millennium. This surge of risk and danger excites Felipe, breaking the monotony of his endless life. He catches Will staring at Sylvia and asks if he thinks she is his grandmother, his mother, or his wife. Will only answers with, "She's beautiful." Felipe introduces Sylvia as his daughter, and she promptly invites Will to a party. The next day, Will spends part of his winnings on a brand new car and drives to Felipe's lavish mansion, where he's introduced to 3 generations of women who all look like sisters. Among the high-class guests, Will feels noticeably out of place. Sylvia notices this and approaches him, rescuing him from isolation. As they talk, Sylvia grows curious about his origins and bluntly asks if he comes from the ghetto. Will neither confirms nor denies it. Sylvia, however, confides in him about her own struggles, admitting that despite her wealth, her life feels meaningless. Her abundance of time is more like a prison than a gift. While they talk, Felipe and his wife watch the two carefully, forcing Will to lead Sylvia outside for some privacy. Together, they walk to the beach, where they undress and dive into the water. Floating side by side under the moonlight, their glowing timers shimmer against the waves. Sylvia drifts away, but the current gently pushes her back toward Will. The intimacy grows, but suddenly, a voice calls out from the shore, shattering the moment. When they return, Felipe invites Will to join another game of poker. But before they can begin, the timekeepers burst in and confront Will. They take him to an office, where Raymond formally introduces himself. He interrogates Will, asking why he came to New Greenwich and how he obtained over a millennium's worth of time. Will answers truthfully, explaining that Henry gave it to him before committing suicide. Raymond doesn't believe the story. He seizes Will's time, places him under arrest, and prepares to transport him. As they leave, Will challenges him, asking why he's so eager to investigate a suicide when countless murders occur every day in the ghetto without notice. Raymond pauses, visibly shaken by Will's words, as they remind him of something Will's father once said. Seizing the moment, Will fights back, disarms the guards, and escapes. He grabs Sylvia as a hostage, leading her through the kitchen and out to his car. Together, they speed away into the night. A high-speed car chase begins, with Raymond ramming into Will's car and forcing them off balance. Will, showing his sharp reflexes, drives in reverse and narrowly avoids colliding with an oncoming truck. They eventually shake off the timekeepers and hide beneath a bridge. Will asks Sylvia for some of her time, but she refuses to give it. By morning, they're back on the road when their car runs over traffic spikes, puncturing the tire and causing a crash. As they lie unconscious, Fortis and his gang arrive. He drains time from Sylvia but leaves abruptly, leaving her with only 30 minutes of life. When she wakes, Will quickly transfers a few minutes to her, and they set off to find more. That night, Sylvia grows comfortable in Will's apartment. She asks about his family, and Will opens up about his mother's death. He recalls his father, a man who was also a gambler, but instead of betting with money, he gambled with time. Though his father won plenty, his generosity eventually cost him his life. Will and Sylvia realize they are about the same age, and as they share more of their pasts, their bond deepens. The next morning, Will checks to see if Felipe followed through with the transfer, but none has been made. Sylvia is crushed by her father's betrayal, though Will insists on letting her go regardless. He escorts her to a phone booth, gifting her a gun as a parting gesture. She responds by kissing him before calling her father to condemn him for failing her. As she speaks, Raymond secretly approaches from behind, pointing a gun at Will. Sylvia turns, spots him, and instinctively fires, wounding Raymond. Will then points his own gun at the injured timekeeper. Instead of draining Raymond's time, however, he gives him some, leaving him alive. Will and Sylvia then escape using Raymond's car. Driving along the main road, Sylvia asks if Will has a plan. Since they're in a timekeeper's car, they decide to impersonate officers and stop another driver. Sylvia, getting too comfortable with the weapon, fires a shot, startling both Will and the man they've stopped. They rob the passenger and steal his vehicle. Later, the two sit in the back seat watching news coverage of themselves. Will reminds Sylvia she still has the option of returning to her father, but she refuses, saying she has no desire to return to such a dull existence. Will leans in, and this time, they finally share a kiss without being rushed. Meanwhile, in his office, Philippe assures his associates that he never paid the ransom. They begin doubting his ability to handle the crisis, but before he can defend himself, Raymond arrives. He explains that Sylvia doesn't even want to be rescued. Philippe, embarrassed, excuses her behavior as Stockholm Syndrome. Raymond is unmoved, declaring that he intends to arrest her. Philippe tries to bribe him with years of his time, but Raymond rejects the offer and walks away. The following day, Will teaches Sylvia how to properly fire a gun. They discuss his plan to redistribute time to the people, and Sylvia promises to help him get what he needs. Together, they stage a heist at a local loan office. A truck smashes through the front glass, and they load up on time capsules. They invite borrowers to take as much time as they want, and the crowd rushes in, overwhelmed with gratitude. The following day, Philippe arrives at a grand building surrounded by heavily armed guards. Sylvia appears first, drawing their attention as she calls for her father. Among the guards is Will, who suddenly steps forward and aims a gun directly at Philippe's head. Ordering the guards to disarm, they take Felipe hostage and march him to his office. Inside lies a heavily secured time vault, and within it sits a device containing 1 million years. Will emerges unharmed and rushes to Maya, handing her the 1,000,000 years to distribute among the people. Raymond draws his gun and takes aim, but the surging crowd blocks his line of fire, giving Will and Sylvia the chance to escape. Determined, Raymond hijacks another car, and the chase continues. Their confrontation comes to a head in the middle of the road. Raymond admits that he too came from the ghetto. He explains that when he finally escaped poverty, he realized the grim truth: the divide between the rich and poor must be preserved. But in the middle of his speech, Raymond suddenly falters, realizing his own time has run out. He collapses and dies instantly. Will and Sylvia, however, are nearly out of time themselves. Desperate, they sprint toward Raymond's car in the distance, their clocks ticking down to seconds. Will reaches it first and takes a share, then races back to Sylvia just as her timer is almost empty. In the last possible moment, he grabs her hand, and the two transfer enough time to survive. With new hope, the citizens begin flooding past the borders into wealthier districts. The men watch helplessly as the carefully maintained hierarchy starts to unravel. Meanwhile, Sylvia and Will continue their mission, now setting their sights on a massive time bank ready to strike again.
Hey, I'm gonna take them for everything they've got.
Come on, help yourselves!
Take the time, it's free.
His crime wasn't taking time. He was giving it away.